and said, well, since when did you ever have anything that crazy? Why shouldn't country clubs belong to country people? Why shouldn't each county have their own golf course so that farmers could take a half a day off and go to the golf course, and the ladies could go over there and rest for a half a day and enjoy the company of each other? Why can't we bring this kind of culture back to our people? Oh, people here are laughing. They've got them in Illinois and Iowa. They're building them in Tennessee and Georgia. Why do you suppose that Carl Albert, the Speaker of the House, that honorable young Carl Albert, in his home county in the great state of Oklahoma, every farmer can turn the water on and off like we shut the lights on and off in this state? Why did that happen? Because there was nobody working for South Dakota for 30 years. Somebody was sleeping. These are the things that I'm concerned about. The third point of my base plan for agriculture provides for an incentive to fix up the buildings instead of destroy them. I notice that your organization, maybe today, Ben, have initiated already a tax lawsuit. I don't know what the outcome's going to be in South Dakota court. I know what it was in California. And if that runs over this country, we're going to have to back off and take a look at the equities, the inequities, if you please, that we've imposed upon rural people for all too long in this country. And here comes the president now under wage and price, and every time he gets in trouble, he comes back to the people on the land. And when under his paradox is, the paradoxical part about it, in my judgment, is that he pursues policies that drive you off. But somehow or another, he thinks that if he's in trouble, he can come out and give a razzmatazz speech to the people on the farm level, and you're going to sustain the country and tell them what great Americans you are. That's never been in question. I don't know of anybody in this country that's questioned the integrity or the loyalty or the patriotism of the American farm people. I don't think that's in question at all. I begin to question the leadership of this country as their patriotism, their sense of duty, their sense of equity, when they continue to pursue the kind of policies that have imposed a depression upon the farm people at the same time that we've had to suffer an inflation. Now that's a paradox if you've ever seen one. How in the world you can pursue policies of inflation at the same time that you impose the principles of a depression upon them, and then come out and say, you're great guys, stick with me and I'll pull you out of it? It puzzles me. I don't understand that kind of business. The fourth point that I propose is a 40-year 4% loan program. And if there was ever anything that had so much interest before our full committee, the House Committee on Agriculture, was the Farm Credit Act of 1971. We still haven't passed it out. All the farm organizations come in and asked for an increase of credit. And by George, we're going to do all that we can to give them this increase in credit. Why? Because they need it to try to get through this thing until we can get some basic agricultural policies that'll keep this country moving. Now, the problem with credit is that you can never accept it as a substitute for income. Credit is not income in anybody's book, but it's an essential tool to do business until you can get some income. And that's what I'm trying to talk to you about, is to write a base plan for agriculture that will actually create a base plan that will stabilize the income to rural America. A 40-year 4% loan must, and it can be done on a sounder policy of monetary and fiscal planning than what we've ever had in the past. First of all, you start with the concept that government doesn't have any money. The only place that government can get its money is from the people. It's your money. And every year we have to raise taxes, and we have to impose duties, and we have to do this, and we have to do that in order to get the money. But the last thing that we do is, when you work hard and produce, your land produces, and you put this seed in the ground and you get a crop, and you put that dollar in the bank, then you look at the secondary requirements of every local bank. And I've had bankers in the audience that come up and stomp their feet at me, but they say you're right. Look at the secondary requirements that they have to pursue under the federal law. And they have to invest in liquid assets, and the most safe investment they can make are governmental securities. And that's where your deposits go out the same day they came in, sent down to Washington, buy up municipals, whatever they can get under their secondary requirements to guarantee the deposits, and that's federal law. And that comes down there, and then we use it to fund 1 million different agencies to come back and be in competition with a local banker. And the banker sits on his hands and says it's good. I simply question his intelligence and his wisdom in serving his community. And I say, well, why don't you fellas come up with a monetary policy whereby the people could get a 40-year loan at 4%, a level rate of interest, and the guy says, you're crazy, we can't make long-term low cost with the high interest rates. And I said simply this: make the 40-year loan. The borrower pays 4%, and the government will pay you for administering and supervising the loan, and we'll keep the farmers, we'll keep the community out here, we'll keep our committee out here that passes on the applications. They'll pass on it, but you fund it. The people belongs to this, the money belongs to the people in this community. And we'll pay you the difference between the level rate of interest to the borrower and the money market rate of interest. It's 8%, okay, we'll pay you 4%. Will you do it? But not less than 2%. We'll be fair with you. And you go ahead and run it. Run your bank. You're the economic nerve center of this community. You're here to serve the people. It's the people's money you're handling. Why don't you keep it here instead of sending it all over the United States, sending it to Washington so we can dribble it back? Keep that money here. It belongs to the people, and you can build your own communities. And you say, what does it amount to? Well, let me give you an analogy, for instance. We tried to pass a $2.25 billion, what we call a special employment law. We passed it, Public Employment Act, 1971. $2.25 billion. How much money do you think is in South Dakota that's invested right now in the secondary requirements from all the banks that belongs to the people of South Dakota? It's in excess of that amount that we appropriated to solve the unemployment problem of the whole United States. Your money has gone out of here. And nobody has truly looked at this thing. And there's no way a banker could lose if we paid him the difference. Now here's the result. A 40-year 4% loan to the borrower for agricultural purposes and agri-related businesses to bring industry into the state or whatever you have. He's going to pay you the 4%, the government pays 4% and it matches 8%, and that's all the banker's getting on it now. And what's the banker getting on his debentures or his bonds that he's buying of government securities? About 5, 5.25, 5.5, whatever it is. The United States Treasury is paying more out to get that money down there now than it would be if you paid it direct to the bank and kept that in the community. All we'd have to appropriate in Congress is enough to pay the difference between the 4% and the money market rate of interest at any time, and then I think we could get the Congress to act to keep the interest rate down so it didn't cost the United States Treasury so much money. And that ought to be an objective. Right now, the Congress really doesn't care how high interest rates go. You can't get a law through there to limit interest rates. You have enough trouble in Pierre. You heard about that, didn't you? But if we were paying the bill, we'd get somebody's attention. What we got to get is the program first. And so it's a savings to the borrower, it's a savings to the government, it's a benefit to the people, and you're using your own money. You get the government out of it, and you don't need all these agencies. I don't care how many alphabet letters you put together, not criticizing any of them. They're all trying to do a job. Until we get this thing, I'm stuck with the same thing that you're stuck with. I have to support the best of what comes along. And that's why I started out by saying to you here that it's real difficult for me to take issue with anything that's purported to help the farmers, because I'm basically a farmer. I understand the problems of farming, but what I do not want to do, I do not want to be a party to selling my people, the people that I most love, and I'm sincere when I say that, the people that I know the best. I will never be a party to selling you down the river, and if it means that I don't go back to the Congress, then I won't go back to Congress, because I don't want to be a party to that kind of a bill. And the Sisk bill is that kind of a bill in my judgment. I cannot support it. I've told Bernie Sisk that. My friend Bernie sits by me in the committee. I don't think he believes in it himself, but he's got it there. But it's a Farm Bargaining Act. And when you're as strong for agriculture as I am, and you're against anything that ought to help the farmers, it simply means that I'm trying to get something better. And I think it can be done. I'm not here to ask you to endorse my program. I told the Farm Bureau, and I told Ben and Tony here recently, I don't want you to endorse my program. Now that's crazy. Let me tell you why. I want you to support it, but I don't want you to endorse it. As sure as the world you endorse it, the Farm Bureau will be against it. And I told the Farm Bureau exactly the same thing. If we're going to get legislation that's beneficial to our rural people, we've got to have the help of consumers in this country. We've got to have the help of working people in this country, and we've got to have all of the farm people working together. Under my farm program, it has the basic principles of the Farmers Union in it, 100% parity for the farm family. It has the free and open market that the Farm Bureau always believed in until just recently, and the CIS came along with his bill. I don't know what happened to them there, but they've got hung up on this thing somehow or another. It does provide for a market. It doesn't make any difference what the market is. Let it go into international commerce. Let it go out into the world. And let's put the emphasis on people. Let's put the emphasis on performance. A man has a slough in his farm. For heaven's sakes, don't drain it. Let's keep it there. Preserve the wildlife habitat. And if his average farm income is $40 an acre and he's got a 10-acre slough, pay him $400 if he doesn't drain it, instead of paying him to drain it at a time that we pay to dig potholes. You try to figure out something that we've had, and somehow or another you guys have been hoodwinked on it. We've been draining potholes at the same time we've been digging dugouts. We've been doing that for quite a few years. We've been forgetting to plant trees lately. Now, you think I'm funny, but it's a fact. I participated in this thing. I had my land in the soil bank for 10 years. In 1956, I thought the whole world was coming to an end then. I quit farming. It was when Benson was Secretary of Agriculture. And I put my farm in the soil bank for 10 years and went to work for the FBI. I got paid for 10 years for doing nothing on the farm, and some people insisted it was the same way in the FBI, but that's not true. Actually, old Denholm was thinking he wasn't going to pass up these opportunities to come along, but I helped destroy my community. Since then, the country school is gone. I sold the buildings off of my farm. The tax base was depreciated. The church went. Another community began to fall. And this is what national policies, national programs have tended to do. Oversimplified. In conclusion, if I could say it most simply, the whole problem in this country today is that we have too long pursued national policies, and some people think that this is socialism, or even one guy jumped up and hollered communism when I said this. It's not true. Things aren't just the way they are. They didn't just happen this way. We've pursued programs that have caused them to come out this way. And what did it cause? It caused too many people and too much wealth of this great country in too few places. That's actually what we produced out of national policies and programs of the past. And it's as simple as that. I don't care how many great doctors or letters you have behind your name or any of the rest of it, that's what's wrong in this country today. We have too many people and too much of the wealth in too few places. And we've got to pursue national policies and programs that will tend to let people voluntarily drift back. Now, the price that we'll pay for this kind of folly is this. The history of the rise and fall of governments all over the world, from the time of the first recorded history, is that the rise and fall of every government that's ever been on this earth has always been precipitated by the social ills and the eruptions of disorder. And after it's all over, and the guns are quieted again, we go back to land reform and give the land back to the people and start all over again. I would like to think that somehow, my friends, that we are wise enough, that somehow we can match our wisdom with our wealth as a nation, and somehow come up with the right kind of programs to save this great country, because I happen to think she's the greatest ship afloat in the sea. Now, I want to close with some remarks from Benjamin Franklin. And I want to refer to him so I don't misquote him. He says basically there seems to be but three ways for a nation to acquire any wealth at all. The first is by war, as the Romans did, in plundering their conquered neighbors. This is robbery. The second is by commerce, which is generally cheating. The third is by agriculture, the only honest way wherein man receives a real increase of the seed thrown into the ground in a kind of a continuing miracle wrought by the hand of God in his favor as a regard for his innocent life and his virtuous industry. It seems to me that our calling has never been greater. The need for action has never been greater, and that the time is now. Thank you very much, and I'll stand for any questions.
Well, yes, our schedule looks like we're a little hurried, but as a matter of fact, it's my understanding that no one from Carl Munt's office will be here. So we do have a little time. Does anyone have a question for Congressman Denholm? He's kind of put himself on the line here. And if anyone has a question, just raise your hand. Oh, we ought to have one or two anyhow. Well, I think the question was, how do you get a few more men like Congressman Denholm in Washington? You know, this is our job, not his. Emil, were you on your feet or some?
Well, I was just wondering if the congressman would venture to say when his bill will come up for...
Is that mic alive, Emil? See if that mic is open.
When do you anticipate that your bill will come up for consideration, and how can we work with you?
Thank you very much, Emil. I have purposely tried to control the timing of this thing. As you know, timing in legislation is pretty important. And I'm hopeful that after the smoke clears away and all the bargaining bills have lost, that the Congress will be ready for mine. And I might say to you that I'm making a special effort to bring this message to the urban people, to the consumers of America, and I need a little time to do that. I think you'll see some news releases on this very shortly, where I have already been in New York, going into Chicago, going into the urban ghetto areas to try to tell them the story of our people. I'm hopeful that I can get those congressmen from those areas to come out here and tell their story to our people, to bring about a human understanding. And next spring, I hope to have a meeting in South Dakota that will involve 50 states on this measure. And the answer to that, your question is, I hope to have my program on the floor next spring.
Frank, Homer Harris, is there anyone in Washington, in the Department of Agriculture or any place else, that can tell the American farm families, is there hopes to maintain you on the land, or isn't there?
Thank you.
And if there isn't, we want to be told, and if there is, we're going to fight until we stay.
I thank you very much for the question. The answer to that is that I do not know anybody, and this includes some good people, some career people, some civil servants over in the United States Department of Agriculture. I do not know anybody at the policy-making level that even recognize that there is a problem in agriculture today. Now let me explain that just a bit. They say, and they're talking about this country, that there is no problem in agriculture today, and there will not be as long as this nation has an abundance of food and fiber. That's exactly what he said, and that's what their theories are now, and that's what your tax dollars are paying those guys to say to the department and to the president, if you please. And that's why they have pursued these policies, and I'm simply saying to you that their policies have been effective. They have accomplished what they set out to achieve, and that was to get rid of these farmers. And now we're just commencing to get some statistics together to show that bigness is not necessarily best. We're beginning to get some statistics now in the last 2 years where the efficiency of the big operator has peaked and is going down. And we're going to come back to the basic concept of farm families, which is the most efficient unit we can have if we can get a base plan that will sustain them as they move out. But that's been most discouraging for me to learn that this is a prevailing philosophy within the Department of Agriculture, that there is no problem in agriculture as long as we have an abundance of food and fiber. They are technically right. I say, gentlemen, you are ultimately wrong. You will destroy your country. And when you equate it with what I said about the Philippines, I have to agree that they are technically right. The Philippines have a problem in agriculture. The guy can't, if he worked a whole year, can't produce enough food to feed himself. And that constitutes a national problem. But over here, if you're sitting up here on a high pedestal somewhere, you say, well, we got an abundance of everything. We've got no problem in agriculture. You see, ultimately, I say it means the end of our country if we don't change it. You bet, and that's what I'm trying to do through getting these boys to come in my district from the urban areas and may go to their district. And I want to bring, and out of that coalition of consumers and producers, we can build the kind of a plan that we need. But I don't believe it can be done between producers and processors without the consumers present. This is the thing that bugs me about the bargaining bills, all of them that we've got. The Mondale bill is worse than the Sisk bill, and you people endorse the Mondale bill. Tony won't like that. He's going to talk after me. He'll get back at me.
Well, Mr. Congressman, I'm Al Johnson. You were talking about this money. You're going to subsidize the banker, which I think is right, from the 4% to whatever it is. You say you can't raise the price of food because the living cost is going to be higher. You've got to let the prices for agriculture go wherever they want and make up the difference in compensatory payments. And let's talk about that.
No.
Brandon killed himself on that program, but it was right. And it's the only way we'll ever get this kind of a program because you'll never get it past the other way. That's the way I see it.
I see Brandon was quite right, but he was ahead of his times, and I think the times demand it more now than it did in '49. I was in Denver when Brandon gave that speech, the National Farmers Union Convention in Denver, Brown Palace, in 1949. I was just a kid then. Go ahead, Emil.
Congressman, you have confirmed my suspicion. There has been no change of farm policy since President Coolidge.
Right.
He made the historic statement, there is no problem so long as farmers will produce.
That's right, Emil. That is correct. And I'd simply say that I'm not going to be a party to making you people sound, just giving you sounds that you like to hear out here. I'm telling you the truth as I know the truth. And if it kills me, okay, I'm done. But I will not be a party to submarining you again. We did not write a minimum wage law based on nuts and bolts and bins. We didn't say if you produce too many wheels, Cliff, that you throw them over here in the bin and we'll pay storage on them for a while. But by George, we've tried to convince these good, honest citizens that we're going to stabilize their income based on acres and bushels and bins. It can't be done because you can't have price supports without production controls, and when you get production controls, you're dead. And I know it. I've been farming too long. Yes, sir.
Congressman, I'd like to just mention in this connection the point you brought out in this land reform. I can heartily endorse your total program, as you put it.
Don't do that. I don't want you guys to endorse my program.
As far as endorsing it on my back doorstep, you know. But the thing that I wanted to bring out, especially I think is the same as family income, land reform is as essential as income itself.
We'll get land reform under my first point, you see, because what happens to the big guy is that if he's farming a full section and he can meet the requirements by using what you're producing over here at your land-grant college, the technical and scientific know-how of increasing production on fewer acres, you'll say to the son, you take the other half section and we have 2 units now. And that's exactly what it's designed to achieve, is to keep our young people out here and give them a fair chance. That's exactly what it is designed to achieve, is to break up the big units, to break up the corporations and put farm family units on there. That's my point. Thank you very much. It was well stated. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Now I think we'll move into the next part of our session here. It's always something that we look forward to at a convention, to have a chance to listen to somebody talk about our regional cooperatives, somebody who knows about our regional cooperatives. Been in Farmers Union for a long time. Many of you know Mrs. Willie. Mrs. Willie has gone on many bus trips with you. She's gone on many trips with her husband and by herself. She's kind of a professional traveler in the last 10 years. And she has a wealth of knowledge. And the Willie family farmed up in the Frankfurt area. And she can tell you better than I think they didn't have any children of their own, but they raised several children who needed a home. And Leo Willie was one of my very favorite friends, and we used to participate in membership drives. I come from Spink County, and the Willies come from Spink County, and we'd have membership drives, and Leo always came in with the most members. And when he went into a farmyard, if the farmer was home, you could just mark down that you had that fella signed up. That's the kind of a man and a friend that Leo Willie was. He worked hard for the Farmers Union. He worked hard for the political party that he believed in. But unfortunately, Leo Willie passed away some time ago. And Mrs. Willie wanted to do something for the Farmers Union and for her husband, Leo, so that we might all remember our good friend Leo and the contribution that he made to Farmers Union, and as well to Mrs. Willie herself. And so I think I'll have to lead into this a little bit, Mrs. Willie. She hit upon the scheme of printing a mural, a large picture on the wall of our auditorium, on the inside of the Farmers Union auditorium on the north wall. And she had an artist in mind, and she'll tell you about it. And he came in about 6 months ago, and we talked about what we wanted in the way of a mural. And he wanted very badly to paint the picture, and we wanted him to do it, and Mrs. Willie paid him to do it. And so later this afternoon, we're going to have open house down at the Farmers Union office from 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock this evening. And there'll be coffee there, and sometime during your supper break, we'd like to have all of you drive down there and see this beautiful mural on our wall. It was brought in, he painted it in his home, and it's brought in on canvas and put up. And you'll be thrilled, and you won't want to come back to the rest of our meeting, but please do. So now I'd like to call on Mrs. Willie to tell us whatever she wants to about the mural and about her husband and about the part that they've played in the Farmers Union. Mrs. Willie?
Is this about right for me?
Oh, you better get down. You better talk right into it. You want to be heard. There you go. Tell it right out.
Can you hear me? All of you do plain. Well, I wanted to do something for Leo Willie. I will say this about the man. He believed in Farmers Union, and he believed in its principles. He was a very strict man in his habits, and he was very dedicated to the Farmers Union. I wasn't interested in it at first, but I became interested in it through him because it was what he wanted. No matter what he was in, he always wanted me in it too. We used to work. He would be in one field with a machine. I would be over in the other. And I was nearly always with whatever he were doing. As Mr. Radcliffe has said, we didn't have children of our own, but we raised children nobody else wanted. And I have been very grateful for these kids that came in there. Now, he was a little bit this way with the young ones. They were welcome there, but he never carried anyone around on a rose leaf. They were to pull their share of the load. And whenever these kids started getting a little too harmonious, I knew danger signals were out. And one time, this was what happened there, and it'll give you a little idea of them. They could use the car, but they had to buy the gas and the tires. And they had to go together, and they had to come home together. They were the only ones that had that privilege in the neighborhood. But they had been getting along a little too good. So they had Myrtle Davenport, she made a good goat for them at times, come to see me. She said, we would like to milk those 2 new heifers that are coming in. We've got them tame. I said, what's the matter? Well, gas and tires had cost more than they had figured. She wanted me to ask him. Whenever they didn't want to ask him anything, they came to me. I waited till he was in the right mood. I told him. He didn't answer for a while, and then later on he said yes, He said, you tell them they can milk those heifers, but I want 2 good calves. Well, he raised the calves. Now, these kids in there had a sense of responsibility and also of usefulness. All of them stayed with us but one that married when she was 18. One of these girls is sitting on the judge's bench in Spokane right now. The judge is off on a kidnapping case, and she is out there. They're all scattered. But this will give you a little idea of him. And he was very decided about funerals. And he didn't want anybody looking at him after he was dead. I never looked upon him in death. I remember him as in life. I carried out his wishes. He didn't want an expensive funeral. And all of these things were ideas that Leo had. Now, Leo came into this state from Belle Plaine, Iowa. When I first came to the Dakotas, it seemed to me it was a from state. Everybody was from some other state. And he was a farmer, and he loved the soil almost religiously. And he loved his neighbors. He could go out and make drives, and people didn't know how he could do it. I don't know either. He was a very simple living man. He lived a simple life. If it would come to scheming, he wouldn't have known how. But he took himself whatever drive he was on, and he was always welcome. Excuse me just a moment. He passed away 2 years ago. Leo Willie became a memory to me the 23rd of August, 2 years ago. And I want to do something as a memorial to him and still carry out what his wishes always were. So that is why the mural is there. Arthur Clark was from a large family. He's the only one that had this artistic ability. He never had a lesson in painting, and he never saw South Dakota. He got library books, and he read the books, and he painted from imagination. And you can get very close up to his work. He's a perfectionist, and I don't think a brushstroke would really be out of its natural place there. Now, they reared a family there. They're not wealthy people. And she also raised the 4 younger children from her own home. When my sister passed on, the husband married again, and he left these children, and she got them. It gave she and Arthur Clark a family of 8. And they had no help in doing this. There wasn't such a thing as welfare then. 2 of these girls are registered pharmacists out of Purdue. And you get some idea of how hard it was. I didn't ask him to come back because I know he can't afford it. And when I paid him, he never made a charge for that. I give him $5,000 for the 3 murals. But it cut me short this last summer. It's the first time I took that much out of my own till. And it was good for me because I found out there was a lot of things that I could do that I had passed by thinking I was too old to do. Leo was 80, not quite, when he passed on. Your speaker is 84. Now I will repeat a little hymn here, and my lady up here will play an accompaniment, and that'll be it. O gentle presence, peace and joy and power, O life divine that knows each waiting hour, thou love that guards the nestling's faltering flight, keep thou my child on upward wing tonight. Love is that presence, only with thine eye can I behold the snare, the pit, the fall. His habitation high is here and nigh, his arm encircles me and mine and all. Oh, make me glad for every scalding tear, for hope deferred, ingratitude, disdain. Wait and love more for every hate and fear. No ill, since God is good, and loss is gain. Beneath the shadow of his mighty wing, in that sweet secret of the narrow way, seeking and finding, with the angels sing, lo, I am with you, always watch and pray. No snare, no follower, pestilence nor pain, no night drops down upon the troubled breast. When heaven's after smile, earth's teardrops gain, and mother finds her home and heavenly rest. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Willie. And don't forget, tonight is the night of the open house, 5 to 7, and it's right down on 14th and Dakota Avenue. Go over here to the first stop sign and stop light and take a right. And then when we quit tonight, we will assume that you will finish in your hotel room tonight. So the next time we come back to adoption of policy program, we will adopt it by section and will not read any more than together than what we read tonight. I know that many of you have just arrived and haven't had time maybe to look at a policy program. It's been mailed to some of you, but some have not seen it. And it wouldn't be fair to ask you to start adopting it by section without reading it. So I'm going to recommend that we just begin to read and explain without doing any adopting. Tonight, read into the program as far as you care to, and then recess for the night, and the next time we come back, we'll be ready to go. Is that okay? Well, not unless there's a question about something. If this is the way you want it now. Yeah, but I expect we'll be doing that more tomorrow than tonight. All right. All right. Now I'm not sure what she wants to do. How long do you want to stay here? All right. Let's start over again. As you know, the policy program was debated and discussed for 2 full days by the people that we call our county councilors, representing 2 people from each county. Spent 2 days in Huron going over this in detail, writing and rewriting it, and this is what we have. Now, our convention lasts for 2 days totally, and I just don't think we have time to do this over again. My suggestion was that we read today for an hour or so, and then if you haven't read enough of it tomorrow when you come back, we can continue to read. But I rather doubt that you want to read the whole thing word for word here, because you're talking about quite a document. But if that's what you want to do, we'll meet tomorrow night after the banquet, I guess, and do it. But you're the delegates. Whatever you want to do. I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's start reading anyhow, and we can decide as we go along. Yes. Arnie, would you get over to the mic? I'd like to have them hear what you have to say.
I sympathize with the lady's attitude, but it just is an impossibility to take this whole long document and read it word by word and pass on each paragraph. We would have to have 4 or 5 days to go through it. That is my attitude. It's been gone through by the counselors, and if the people take it and study it tonight, especially the parts that they're interested in, and come in tomorrow and bring any objections or corrections that they might have, I think that would be feasible. I don't think reading it all over here would work.
Any other comment? Well, let's start reading it anyhow, and we can decide as we go along. We'll start down at this end. Harvey, do you want to start reading? And I guess you'll have to come up here because we don't have any mic. And I'm going to have to duck out for a few minutes to make a tape.